Okay, I'm going to be going over how a bill becomes a law, and this is a very complicated process. And we have the House and the Senate, and then we have to get an identical bill that becomes a law. And basically, there are about 10,000 or more bills that are introduced into um, Congress each year, and in normal years, about 1,000 make it. So it's about 1,000 out of 10,000. So not too many. 10% is the ratio. The Do Nothing Congress in 1948 under Harry Truman, they made about 885 laws, and currently, right now, we're under 100. Basically, Congress is doing just the bare minimum. They're not passing many laws. There's not many that Obama is passing or signing. He is not vetoing anything. It's basically nothing. Nothing's getting through except for the bare minimum of functioning in the government. And a lot of it's due to gridlock and partisanship and actually a lot of different reasons. So bills basically in general just die in committee. They just go to a committee and then they die and they never see the light of day. And that's how most of them die. But we'll go through this, and it's a complicated process. So in the House and then in the Senate, so you see the House here and then the Senate. So I'm going to go with the House, and they a lot of times are introduced simultaneously. So the House, a bill is introduced. Normally it's put into a hopper, which is a box, and then it's taken out of the box. It is read, and it's read by the clerk, and it's given a number. HR 1, House of Representatives 1 would be the first one, and then you go HR 2, HR 3, HR 4. Over here, the senator actually has to read the bill and introduce the bill, and it would be labeled S1, S2, S3. So there is no hopper in the Senate. It's a smaller branch. It's only 100 members, so the senator actually reads the bill. So then it's introduced into a committee. So you would go into one of the standing committees, and it can go into many different numbers of committees. I remember with Obamacare, the bills were in 6 or 7 different committees they're working on, but normally it should go into, say, like one committee on banking or one committee on agriculture or one committee on Veterans Affairs, depending on what the title of the bill is. And then from there, the bill goes to a subcommittee. So bill is going to a subcommittee after that, and the subcommittee does most of the work and most of the research on the bill. Over here, again, you've got your 100 senators, and then it goes into a committee. So the committee will mark up the bill and make changes. So the committee does the work. They could kill the bill. They could rewrite the bill. They can make little changes on it. They can totally do something different with it. So they mark up the bill with changes. Committee marks up the bill with any changes. So you see it's on both sides there. Of course, it can die in committee, but if they're doing work, something's going to come out of it. Both the committees have to vote. They have to vote whether the bill gets passed. Now, the committees are political, so the political party makeup of the committee determines on the number of representatives and the percent of representatives in the House and the Senate. So if it is a 60-40 Republican-Democrat in the House or the Senate, then it's 60-40 on the committee. And then the committee members vote. And normally who's in charge of the committee is who's in charge of the House or the Senate in that political party. So if right now it's Republican in the House, Republican in the Senate. Republican are the chair people in the committees, and there are more Republicans on the committee than Democrats just as members. So they vote normally on party lines. So then you go here and it says vote on by full committee. So it goes out of the subcommittee, goes to the committee, then they vote for it. The committee then says it goes to the floor. Committee reports the bill, and then it goes to a calendar. This says posted on the House calendar, voted on by full committee, and then it goes to a calendar in the Senate. And there are a number of different types of calendars. There's only like a couple in the Senate, but there's like 5 in the House. So basically it goes to a calendar. Here, House reading the bill, and then amendments are added. And actually there is a Rules Committee in the House, and the Rules Committee determines, are there going to be amendments? How long is the debate? So there's like an intermediate step of the Rules Committee determining what's happening with that bill when it gets to the floor. So they read the bill, they have debate, they have amendments added, and the amendments could be a rider, it could be, a defense bill, and they add something about schools, which is totally unrelated, but they add that because they know the defense bill will get passed. There's some riders that are poison pills that actually kill the bill because they're so awful and bad on those. So the Senate does the same thing. They read, they debate, amendments are added to the bill, and amendments can make the bill stronger. They can be unrelated, so they're very important. This is where a lot of things with John McCain saying he doesn't like pork and pork barrel comes from those amendments. So then you have the full House votes, full Senate votes. So it's on a calendar. They vote for it, and they vote yay or nay. It's normally just a simple majority to pass a bill. Now, the Senate in this, they have a thing called a filibuster, and they can just filibuster any bill that they don't like. So a minority person, one person can stop a bill and just talk forever. Past senators have read out of the phone book, read the Bible, read different things. Recently, Rand Paul did a long filibuster. Ted Cruz did a fake one because there was no bill on the floor, but Rand Paul did one about defense, and it was an important one because I think he talked for about 16 hours. Normally, all you have to do is threaten the filibuster, and then everything stops on that bill. The interesting thing is, to stop a filibuster, you need 60 votes. So in practice, to pass a bill to make it a law, you need 60 votes in the Senate. And it's really in the Constitution, it just says majority, 51 to 49, 50-50. Tie goes to the vice president. It becomes and passes. But right now, because of these things, because of the filibuster, you need 60 just to vote on the bill. So then here, the Senate votes, the House votes, it goes to a conference committee, and they get the identical bill. They have to be the same thing. So the conference committee makes sure all the wording, all the phrases, everything is the same. And in one of the other committee PowerPoints, I said we don't do this anymore. Well, because it's so hard to get the two parties to work together, what they have basically found that's easier to do is whichever one was harder to pass, say the House had a harder bill or the Senate did, whichever one passed, the other side votes on the identical bill. And they just vote on that one to make sure that it goes through. And if both vote for the identical bill, it then goes to the president. So then after you have the bill passed from the House and the Senate, it goes to the president. And the president has three options. The president can sign the bill and it becomes law. The president can do nothing and just not sign it. And after 10 days, it becomes law. Or he can veto it. In a veto, he signs it, says reject it, and it goes back to the Congress. And then what happens with that is Congress has to vote on that bill, and they have to get 2/3, which is pretty hard to do. They have to get 2/3 of Congress to override the veto. And the last congressional override was in Ronald Reagan's term. It was sanctions on South Africa, and he vetoed the sanctions, and Congress overrode the veto. And that was the last one. I think that was like 1988, 1989 for an override. So if something's vetoed, normally it's pretty much dead. Also, if it's at the end of the term or end of the session and Congress is going to go out on holiday and there's less than 10 days left, so there's 5 days left and it goes to the president's desk, he doesn't sign it, it doesn't become a law. It's called a pocket veto, and it just ends and just drops there. Some of the things that have happened recently, you'll see signing statements where the president will sign a bill and it becomes law, but they'll say, well, I don't like this part, I don't like this part, I'm not going to enforce this. There's nothing in the Constitution about signing statements. The president is basically there to enforce the laws, and that's their job. If they don't like it, don't sign it. Or if they don't like it a lot, veto it. That's kind of like my opinion on that. So it's very complicated for how a bill becomes a law. You're going to need to know the different steps, the different committees, the subcommittees, the makeup on all this. I covered the basics on this, and just to make sure you understand the basics and how a bill becomes a law, because we'll have quite a few questions on the bill-making process, lawmaking process on the final, and also on any quizzes and things that we might have. Also might be in a project that you might have to do. So know all the steps, know all the things. This is not one of the best ones, but I thought it was good to show both sides, the Senate and the House, showing both sides on there. So it's a good one. So you can look at other ones, and we'll probably have a form for you to fill out on the different steps for how a bill becomes law. If you have any questions, please ask in class or post after the video.